feel like I've mentioned many times in previous videos on this channel and on my website, by the way, check it out, wagewars.com, that air power was so fundamental to what made World War II so deadly, and how miles of territory could shift in and out of control so quickly. So today, I'm going to showcase the finest aerial vehicles to grace the skies of World War II, and how they changed the tide of the war. Of course, this is my opinion, and instead of focusing on pure statistics to form this list, I will take combat effectiveness and overall notoriety of these aircrafts into account. So without further ado, here are the top 5 airplanes of World War II. Starting it off strong with the all-American Freedom Rings bomber, the ever-famous B-17 Flying Fortress. Sure, an argument can be made for the British Lancaster, but I feel in most ways the B-17 was a superior bomber aircraft. Before invading through Normandy was even an idea, many generals thought they could break the hearts of the Germans and Japanese and force a surrender through a bombing raid campaign alone, and many of those raids were done in this very aircraft. Armed with multiple high-caliber 50 BMG side cannons and ball turret guns, this bomber could fly all the way to Berlin with little fighter escort and still come out on top, dropping its nearly 5,000 kilogram payload on target. It's a combination of firepower, payload, and ingenuity that makes this little piece of America so effective, and why it is number 5 choice on my list. Now at number 4, I have another controversial choice, the Japanese Mitsubishi A6M0, known in most places as just the Zero. This plane is majorly responsible for the devastating Oriental Blitzkrieg, in which Japan invaded most of the South Pacific scene in World War II. The Americans simply couldn't combat these aircraft with their F-4F Wildcats early on in the war, until 1942 when the P-51 Mustang was finally released and started to decimate the Zero, and the plane only became really effective in kamikaze attacks. It's clear that this aircraft wasn't the best of the war, not by a long shot, but early in the conflict, Allied air power simply could not combat this agile, deadly aircraft. Events like the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot may convince you otherwise, but you can't deny that this aircraft put the lightning in lightning war.
Get him, Mr. Get him! Holy shit! Get him!
At number 3, we have the most feared aircraft in the German armory, the Junkers Ju-87 Stuka dive bomber. This aircraft was feared by every Allied soldier who survived its deadly accurate dive bombing runs. This dive bomber is arguably the most effective of the war. It was the bane of every serviceman's existence, from soldier to supply convoy. Besides being effective from the first days of the war in Poland to the final days of fighting in Berlin, this aircraft had a special component that wasn't only to inflict harm on soldiers, but mental harm as well. Named Jericho trumpets, these sound devices were mounted on the underside of the Ju-87 so that when the plane entered a steep dive, a shrieking wail would emit from its fuselage. The best way to explain this is just to let you guys hear it for yourself. And the most terrifying part is that the sound of the siren wasn't as terrifying as the silence that fell after the plane pulled away and released its bomb onto the terrified servicemen below. At number 2 we have, I think, the most controversial pick on this list, the Focke-Wulf FW109. Yeah, I get it, but put those pitchforks down for 1 second and hear me out. I know some of you are obviously outraged that I decided to put this in the second spot and not the first, and I have a good reason for it. The Focke-Wulf was, and still is, an outstanding aircraft, and if you put it up against the American P-51, sure there would be an advantage on the 190's maneuverability, but honestly it's up to the pilot's skill. The P-51 and the FW190 are certainly equally matched, but that is why the 190 takes a loser spot. It didn't have an effect on the war as big as the P-51 did. Yeah, sure, the P-51 had less maneuverability, but that didn't matter for its purpose. In the late war, the purpose of most Allied fighters was to accompany their bombers, and the P-51 did a great job of that. Its operational range dwarfed that of the 190. The 190 had a 500-mile range, where the P-51 had an 850-mile range. Even if the 190 was a superior aircraft in aerial dogfights, it didn't matter if it couldn't escort German bombers to their targets in Allied cities, and the 190 was relegated to defending from attacking bombers, where maneuverability didn't matter anyways. Long story short, the P-51 had a huge impact on the Allied victories, and the FW-190 was the right plane for the wrong war. And besides, it wasn't even massively used until it was too late to make a difference. And finally, at number 1, the right plane for the right war, the P-51 Mustang. This aircraft was, I think, so crucial to the total destruction of all Japanese naval and air power that the war would have looked drastically different without it. Remember, the P-51s were there as escorts for the B-17s when they leveled German cities. The P-51s were there to destroy completely the once proud A6M0 and win the area war in the Pacific. The P-51s were there, shooting down any Ju-87 Stuka that dared too close to Allied combatants. And now, the P-51 is here, claiming the number 1 spot on this list. Not for its design, not for its guns, but its ability to take the Axis powers by storm, destroying any aircraft that dare fly into its line of sight, and winning back the free world, and most of all, winning the Second World War. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and leave a comment for what topic I should cover next time on the wars we waged. Thanks to you all for watching.